All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with the event this evening. First, I want to say good evening to everyone. I am Dr. Karen Cruz. I'm the Director of School Counseling, and we are delighted to have this opportunity tonight to share information with you about the new MCPS grading and reporting regulation and the college admissions process. We have an amazing panel of guests consisting of MCPS and the higher education community. Before we begin, there are a couple of housekeeping things that I want to share with you. First, if you are someone who needs language interpretation, there is an icon at the bottom of the screen that you can click on and select the language that you would like interpreting, and you will be able to follow the instructions that were sent in the email last night or the email that you received today. Also, question and answers, you will be able to access the Q&A button to ask any questions, and we will answer the questions in the Q&A section. Now we'll begin with introductions. First, I am Karen Cruz. I'm the Director of School Counseling, and I'm going to first share with you that we have our co-host here, Jill Simmons from Collegiate Directions. And the order of the evening, we will actually have Dr. Keisha Logan, who's going to talk with us about the new MCPS grading and reporting regulation. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jill Simmons, and she will again introduce herself, and she will introduce the panel of participants that are directors of admissions at some of our local colleges and universities. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Logan to share with us some highlights and information about the MCPS grading and reporting regulation.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Keisha. No. Technical difficulty. Hello, let's try this. One. All right, let's try one more time. There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Keisha Logan, and I'm the Director of Curriculum Development and Instruction. Thank you for your patience as we figured out that small technical difficulty. I am here tonight to share with you an overview of the most recent changes to our secondary, some secondary changes to our grading and reporting regulation. And so I'm going to walk you through what those changes are, and then we will continue with our panel discussion. First, let's start with why these changes were made. And we have three of the main reasons here on the screen. The changes to the regulation were made to increase rigor and accountability. We want to ensure that we're holding the highest expectations for all of our students, but also that we have very clear guidelines that are established for our teachers and all of our staff members who are supporting our students, so that our students are getting the best education that they deserve. And so that was one reason that we made these changes. Another is to decrease school-to-school variance. According to the grading and reporting regulation, we really want to ensure that there's consistency between the different schools. And so there were some things that needed to be included in the regulation to strengthen the consistency and decrease variance. And finally, again, clarifying expectations for all. Really important that those expectations are high, because here in MCPS, we believe that our students are capable of excellence, and this regulation just provides the tools and the clarity needed so that our students can rise to the occasion and the expectations that we set for them. So I'm going to share with you what the changes are. First, one of the probably most notable changes is a change to how final grades are calculated. So previously we had a table in our regulation, and teachers used that chart to be able to determine the final grade. Now a new final grade calculation will be implemented for all students in grades 6 through 12. We call students in grades 6 through 12, sometimes you may see them referred to as secondary students. And so we're talking about our middle and high school students. So now teachers will no longer use those grade calculation charts to determine the final letter grade for students. Grades will be based on the calculations that you see on the screen. For those semester courses, we're going to be taking the average, right? The numeric average of marking period 1 and marking period 2. If it's a semester course, you would divide that by 2. If it's a full year course, then you would be dividing by 4, right? The percentage for each marking period and divide by 4. So that is a significant change in the way that final grades have been calculated previously. Some other changes that were made most recently to the regulation includes reassessment. So we've always had expectations that teachers would provide opportunities for students to receive reteaching and reassessment, except now, again, emphasizing the need for clarity, there will be at least 2 opportunities in the all task category in every classroom in our secondary schools. And so students can expect that teachers will inform them of at least 2 opportunities for retakes, right, that you will be able to take advantage of. With our 50% rule. So the 50% rule in our regulation states that no assignment can be lower than 50% unless the only way that a student can receive a grade lower than 50% is if that work was not submitted. And so if a student does not submit work, then the student can, by the deadline, then the student can receive a 0. And then also the regulation outlines the only other way that a student can receive a grade lower than 50% is in the case of academic dishonesty. So with this rule, we wanted to provide some clarity around how teachers assign a 50%. And we want to make sure that our students are showing some effort before they are able to earn at least a 50%. So the 50% rule applies for work that shows progress toward the standards. It just means that students are demonstrating that they're working toward achieving the goal, the intended learning target. Deadlines. So clarity around due dates and deadlines. So a maximum of 10 days after the due date. That means that there's a specified period of time, which can be no more than 10 days between the due date, when an assignment is due, and the deadline, the last possible day that the teacher will accept that assignment. And so students, that just means really we want our students to turn the work in on the day that it is due. That is the expectation, but the absolute last time that you can turn it in is no more than 10 days. And that is dependent on what your teacher has shared with you. You really need to ensure that you're following your teacher's directions. And again, with deadlines, there will be no late work in the last 5 days of the marking period. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be assigned different assignments in the last 5 days, or you're not going to have work in the last 5 days. The teachers are just not going to accept late work in the last 5 days of the marking period. It really is a time where it's time for assessment. It's a time for teachers to wrap up the end of the quarter, and so late work will not be accepted. And it's a time for students to receive feedback. And that leads to the final change, timely feedback. So graded work will be returned within 10 school days. So teachers are going to be working hard to ensure that students are getting timely feedback so that students can then apply the feedback that they receive to make changes and really be able to demonstrate how they are making progress on the learning goals for the class. Another change to point out is that we will now be implementing semester summative assessments. So in our secondary schools and in some of our courses, we have had for the past couple of years quarterly district assessments, maybe in English language arts, math class, now to assess your learning across an entire semester for some of our courses, and I'll share those in a moment, we will have semester assessments. And so they will count for 10% of your marking period 2 and marking period 4 grade. Here is a chart that details the courses that we are starting with this year that will have semester summative assessments. Again, it just means that these assessments are going to assess learning across the entire semester rather than just the marking period. And so you can see that it's going to be many of the courses that also had quarterly assessments previously. Your English, language arts, your English for multilingual learners, and this is both on-level and honors courses, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and pre-calculus, both honors and on-level. So how can you stay informed about what these changes are? So what I just shared with you and more information is all available on our website. And the website is right at the bottom of the screen here. And it's continuing to be updated. We had information about this webinar on our website, and anytime there's more information, we're going to be putting examples up really soon about what the marking period report card is going to look like. And so check our website frequently. That is a place where you can go to stay updated. Some things you'll see there right now is we have a video that gives you a nice summary, like I just shared with you, of what the changes are. We have a frequently asked questions document. So many of the questions that you submitted in registering for this webinar, which we looked at, and I'll talk to you about a few, you can go to the FAQ document and many of them are there. Some of them we're going to add to that document because they were so good. So please check out our website for more information. Just briefly to address some of the questions that came through as you registered for the webinar, some of the frequently asked questions. So who do the changes apply to and when do they take effect? So these changes that I just explained to you to our grading and reporting regulation apply to our secondary students. Again, those are students in grades 6 through 12, and they began on the first day of school this year. 25-26 school year. So they're currently in effect. How are legally required IEP or 504 accommodations handled under these new rules? And so one thing, and there's another question, there are a few questions about accommodations, specifically about IEPs or 504 plans for students who receive extended deadlines. So really important to note that all students are entitled to their accommodations as outlined on their individualized plans. And so please make sure that you are checking with your case managers, your counselors at school, depending on who supports with your individual plan. And that should be followed. Students with IEPs or 504 plans who have extended time accommodations will receive adjusted due dates and deadlines in alignment with those plans. Okay, and so it's really important that that continue to be followed. Were there changes to how advanced placement, honors, international baccalaureate courses are weighted? No. So several people put these questions forward. That's why I wanted to be sure to share that there were no changes to how courses are weighted. Both weighted and unweighted grade point averages are reported on the transcript. And to determine the weighted grade point average, an additional quality point is added to grades of A, B, and C in all honors, advanced level, and advanced placement courses. And so that's just some information because people wanted to know how weights were determined, but there were no changes. This is the process that we have continued to have in MCPS. Does MCPS report class rankings? This, again, there was no change here, but this was a question that came up in that you reported. No, MCPS does not report class rankings. And how will MCPS communicate these changes to colleges? Great question. So MCPS has added an explanatory note to the school profile. School profile is something that all of our high schools create, and it's something that not only will be sent to colleges, but also oftentimes when students apply for scholarships, the school profile may be sent as well. It gives a nice overview of the school, and it also talks about the school systems, grading and reporting, rules, regulations, and all of this is explained in the school profile. And there's a note on the transcript that links the admissions for the schools to a website that will provide them with more information. So it's all explained there so that the whether it's a scholarship committee or a college or university, they understand that this shift has taken place in MCPS. And how will we monitor progress? So MCPS will analyze data quarterly. We will assess the impact of these changes. We're going to get out and talk to our students and see how they are feeling every quarter and gather that, that feedback about how things are going. We're also going to engage with our staff and our families about implementation to ensure that the changes that we put in place are having the intended impact. So thank you all for the great questions that you submitted. I'm now going to turn things back over to you, Dr. Cruz.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. And next, we will have our college admissions panel. And if all of our college admissions panel guests could turn their cameras on. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jill Simmons from one of our partner college access programs, Collegiate Directions, and she will introduce herself and also all of the panel members here that are here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So good evening. I'm Jill Simmons from Collegiate Directions, and I am thrilled to be here this evening to moderate the panel. Thank you so much to Dr. Cruz for putting this together, and thank you so much to all of our panelists who are joining. I'll be posing a set of questions to each school tonight, and I just wanted to let everyone in the audience know that these questions were compiled from the responses you submitted when you registered for this event. So I went through, I looked for themes and ideas and big questions that I saw repeated, and so I hope that you find all the information that you need from tonight. But we have a truly exceptional set of panelists tonight, and I know that you're going to learn a lot about the college process. So to our panelists, if you could please just introduce yourself, your name, your role, and your institution to begin.
I guess I'll start. Hello, everyone. My name is Willan August, and I am with Morgan State University, and I'm an admission counselor as well as an alumni, class of 2020.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Amy Moffett, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Vice President for Admissions at Towson University. I'll kick it over to Calvin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Calvin Wise, and I serve as the Dean of Admissions at Johns Hopkins University. And I think, James, you're going to wrap us up.
That's what it seems like, Calvin. And good evening. I'm James Massey. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at University of Maryland, College Park. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. All right, so James, we'll start with you then for this first question. If you could share what makes a student a good fit for your institution and maybe talk a little bit about the profile of an admitted student in your freshman class.
Surely, I'm happy to do so. So again, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having us all. At University of Maryland College Park, as a flagship of the state, we typically receive a very large number of applications. We just received over 67,000 applications for freshman admission this year for a class of about 5,200. And that's a lot of students. I think it's just important to kind of pause and know that, students are really sharing their thoughts and deciding on what schools they want to apply to. But ultimately, we know that every student's going to find that perfect fit for themselves. When students are applying to university, we typically want to see that they apply by November 1st. That's one of the most important things in terms of a successful applicant on their way to admission is to really meet that early deadline. It's early action, it's non-binding, but it does give them the most competitive shot at getting admitted to the university. When students are applying at that point, we want to see the very best that they have to offer us about themselves. We want to know everything. It's not the time to be humble. We like to see students that are showing us what they're doing both inside and outside of the classroom. Certainly, we want to see if they're challenging themselves in terms of their academics in light of what's available to them at their respective schools. It's not about taking all AP or all honors courses. It's about taking things that are challenging to them, but that they can do well in. We're certainly looking fully at their transcript and seeing exactly how well they're doing in those classes, but ultimately where they're going to land at the end of those first 3 years and how they're continuing to challenge themselves in that senior year. So what we're looking for is students that are really rising to the occasion and really thinking about academically what kinds of things interest them, what they could do well in, and how that can possibly be a match at perhaps our institution as well. We're also interested in them showing leadership outside of the classroom and being involved in activities that really speak to them. They don't have to necessarily be the president of everything. There's going to be one president in most organizations, but we want to see that they're making a contribution that's meaningful, something that's really important to them, something that might be sustained over time, and then tell us a little bit about it. Whether they use their opportunity through their activities listing or if they take their essay and weave that in as well and really kind of share a little something else. Really knowing that we're not doing interviews, taking advantage of any component of the application to really share more about who they are is going to make them stand out in that larger pool of applicants. And so we like to say, for many years, you've heard folks talk about the holistic evaluation. We tend to talk about the whole person, really just understanding that every student is a whole person and they're bringing different attributes about themselves that's really going to make them a great fit for our institution. So that's what we're looking for. But overall, we have seen a very competitive environment in terms of our applicant pool. Just to be very transparent with everyone, when you're talking about a large number of applicants, most of our students that are gaining admission for fall or have mostly A's and B's and a challenging curriculum based upon what's available to them. If students are opting to submit their test scores, they're typically going to be very high. We've seen students that are in the, literally, I would say above the 1490 mark in terms of students that are submitting SATs. We are SAT optional at this point, but they're submitting, they're typically very high. Same thing with ACT as well. So hopefully that's helpful to paint a picture as we continue the conversation.
Definitely. Calvin, would you like to answer next?
Yeah, I think James did a good job in talking about the holistic whole person review. I want to elevate two things that he mentioned, one on the academic side and one on the non-academic side. On the academic side, again, we are not drawing a line in the sand at a GPA number. We are not counting, AP, IB, and dual enrollment. We're not comparing students even within the same school. We are looking at you individually in the context of where you're coming from. And who you are as a person. So that's a big misconception about our admissions processes. We are looking really deeply into your transcript. And on the non-academic side, we are less concerned about titles and awards and more focused on really what was your impact and how you took initiative within your community. And so there's ways that you can show that throughout the application. So think critically about what that means for you. And as James mentioned, the match piece, right? We are all different institutions that are going about crafting our incoming class in different ways. And so it really is in our process as we look at your essays and even your letters of recommendation to understand kind of your perspectives and your skill sets and who you are as a person and how you're going to be additive to our community. On the kind of quantitative side, we are a highly selective institution. Students who are going to be competitive for Hopkins are going to be near the top of their class. But I will say we are not, drawing a line at anywhere within that, but they're going to have mostly A's taking rigorous courses within the context of where they're coming from. We are test required for current seniors. And so this is the first year that we are returning back to a full testing environment. However, last year, our middle 50 percentile for SAT was between a 1530 to a 1570, which is pretty high. But we admit from a range, right? So I always encourage students, if you feel like Hopkins is a good fit, don't just look at the middle 50 percentile for the testing and not apply because you feel like you're not competitive. Again, we are looking at multiple components of who you are to assess if you're going to be a good match for our institution.
Thank you. Okay, Amy, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, no, I think James and Calvin really wrapped up about students looking at fit and looking at what's best for them and kind of those components. So I'll talk a little bit more about TU and our admissions process. So we are the second largest institution in the state of Maryland. So we have 22,000 applications for about 3,000 freshmen that enroll. And we are a little bit more open admissions. We have anywhere from a 70 to 75% admit rate, depending on the class. Every year is different based on the applicant pool. TU is test optional, so only about 20% of students actually submitted a test. And so our ranges are going to be a little bit skewed, right? So our middle 50% for SAT is 1020 to 1320. And then middle 50% ACT is 24 to 30. But usually with test optional schools, it's the students that have stronger tests that are going to submit those for review. Our average weighted GPA is a 3.9, and that is on the weighted scale. So a lot of students in the state of Maryland are around there. For our application deadlines, very similar to James, TU is moving to a November 1 deadline this year. So it was November 15th. It is now November 1. And that's just to match some of our peers in the state so that it makes it easier for students. So they just have one deadline to really think about. So that's that November 1 deadline, which is early action, non-binding. So highly encourage students to get the application in there because there's really no benefit if you wait. The only benefit is you're considered for scholarships. So it's really to your advantage to get everything in early. So I'll stop there because I know we have other questions and I'll let Will Ann talk about Morgan State.
All right, hello. So here at Morgan State, we are actually everything optional, meaning tests, recommendation letter, even essay. So the average student comes in with a 2.5 GPA. We do have a estimate about 75% acceptance rate. However, that is just for general acceptance. If students are looking for scholarships and possibly to get into the honors college, they do need at least a 3.8 weighted GPA to qualify for the scholarship. We have a holistic review. However, every student is looked at differently based on what they submit. So we won't compare a student that submitted test scores to another student that does not. So again, everyone is looked at differently. And when I mean optional, I mean some students do submit a whole resume, all the things, recommendation letters, all of that, but some students do not. So we don't compare the two. For the honors college, if students are interested, we do advise that they apply by at least December 1st, because the honors college do have a separate application deadline. And for everyone else, the application is open until April 1st, and documents have to be submitted by April 30th.
Great. Thank you so much. This next question, so when I looked at all the family submitted questions, students and parents submitted questions for this event tonight. And this next one was probably the one that I saw submitted the most in different ways. But if you could discuss how your institution evaluates transcripts in the admissions process. So if you can speak to how you might look at an AP course compared to an IB course maybe, or how you compare rigor among high schools. I know some of you said you're not looking at students between high schools, but if you could just talk about how you're evaluating each student's transcript in terms of rigor, grade point average, the classes that they took. And then Calvin, if you'd like to start with this one.
Yeah, I can start on build on what we were talking about earlier. So I think a couple of important notes. I think the school profile was mentioned earlier. So that is a helpful tool to understand what's offered at each individual high school. We also have a regional admissions officer model. So we have a staff member who's responsible for Montgomery County, who's familiar with the county. So that regional context, that specific school context is really important and provides a lens to how we look at the transcript. And then we break down the transcript. We're looking at all 4 years. We're looking at the grades. We're looking at what the grades mean. The GPA to us is just kind of a number. We're really trying to dig into that. And we're looking at grade trends. At Hopkins, you don't apply to a school or a specific major outside of BME, biomedical engineering, but the rest of the programs you're applying to Hopkins. So we will use the major that you tell us to help inform how we look at your application. For instance, if you want to be an engineer, hopefully you're taking rigorous math and science courses, right? I wouldn't want to stand on a bridge that an engineer built that failed physics, right? So there is kind of that added lens that we take around your academic interests and how we look at your transcript. But again, we are not comparing students to different schools. AP, IB, dual enrollment, depending on your school, those are all rigorous course offerings. I always suggest students to work with their counselor about what makes the most sense for them, but we're pretty indifferent in regards to what you pursue. The only difference is once admitted, and if you want to receive credit for some of those coursework, there are different requirements, either from an AP exam, IB exam, or for certain grades on your dual enrollment classes. So try to separate what's happening in the admissions process and then some of the noise that happens when students are going through the credit audit. But on the admissions side, we just want to see students that are taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to them in their high school as we're assessing their academic character.
Yeah, and Jill, if we could just add on, because I think Calvin really summarized probably what a lot of our processes look like. He did mention trends, and so I just want to elaborate on that a little bit more in case you're not familiar with that admissions term. So in high school transcripts, there's kind of 3 different trends that admissions offices might be looking for. They might be looking for an upward trend. So that is when students are in 9th and 10th grade, and maybe they just didn't get a great start, right? Maybe they have some C's, B's, D's on their transcript, but then their junior and maybe senior year, they're getting A's and B's. That's an upward trend, right? We like to see that there's improvement. And then there's a consistent trend. That's what we love to see, is that a consistency, especially if it's A's and B's, right? That's showing that the more rigorous courses that get put in a schedule, usually in junior, senior years, and the students are able to do and maintain the quality grade in the junior and senior years. And then there's the downward trend. This is the one that we we have questions about, right? And we hope that there's explanations in the essays or in the letter of recommendations to help explain why there's a downward trend. So 9th and 10th grade starting off strong, A's and B's, and then junior and senior year, maybe, not doing so well in classes with some C's or D's or F's. We really are looking for an explanation at that point. So that's one thing that I wanted to clarify. Again, Calvin mentioned the school profile and the high school transcript. There's lots of nuggets on the high school transcript, from understanding the grading policies and scales. There's all this fine print that you all probably don't ever look at, but we do. We look at it very closely. Same thing with the school profile. We know schools and districts put a lot of time and effort into that and consult admissions officers on what should go on the school profile. And so that is kind of our complementary resource whenever we're looking at high school transcripts. And then same thing for Towson. We don't have a preference of AP or IB or dual enrollment. They show rigor. I will say that there is a state policy for the state of Maryland for all the public institutions that we do have to award AP credits with a score of a 3 or higher. We have to give an equivalency of a course. So that was a state policy that went a couple years ago. So you may see some more credits being given for APs. But again, look at every institution's policies. They'll have charts on there, and they'll have some more guidance about advanced credits.
Just to add to the conversation, I would share that when looking at the transcript at Maryland, we tend to look at it as a story. We want to see where students started out in their freshman year and ultimately where they landed by their junior year, and then an eye towards where they're going in their senior year for consistency. And so that kind of helps us to understand what that student's academic journey looks like. It's also, telling the story of making choices, academic choices. And we encourage students, again, to make really strong and sound academic choices. Sometimes it's either turning up rigor, and sometimes it's kind of dialing back and making decisions about what's best for them. But that all does play itself out in the transcript, and we pay close attention to that. Also, the other thing that I wanted to mention, in addition to what my colleagues had mentioned, is just the dual enrollment piece. While we look at anything above a general course curriculum as challenging themselves in rigor, so if it's AP, if it's IB, honors, even the GTs of the world, all those things are above general course curriculum. We will look at that as a student challenging themselves above and beyond a general course. This would be inclusive of dual enrollment, but when students are taking classes through dual enrollment, those grades do count. So it's not just the A for effort for doing it, but we're looking at the outcomes and we're requesting those transcripts because those are real courses. And so the outcomes, a real A is a real A, but a real C is a real C. And that can color and be a part of that evaluation for admission as well.
And I would just like to echo what everyone else have already said, especially when it comes to the AP, IB, and dual enrollment. We don't have preference. We do take it, all of those. However, as an admission counselor and me being on the road, I have noticed there's a higher percentage of students doing dual enrollment, and that is highly because some of their high schools do have partnership with some community colleges that offers those classes for free. And they get to carry those credits over to our universities. So that has been a tip that we've seen. And again, we don't compare students from different high schools. We don't even compare students in the same high school with each other. Everyone is looked at individually. And how do we get updates on grading policies and things like that? Typically, we do have close relationship with the high school counselors. Again, as a admission counselor myself, I'm on the road. I'm in constant communication with these high school counselors. So they typically used to send me their updates along with their updated school profile, and they'll let me know how that changes. And of course, I will take that to my admission team and my director so they can figure out if that will affect our admission process that year or not. And does the new grading policy make the application process more competitive? I will say we'll have to see, because I believe this just been implemented this year. So it may affect the students coming in comparing to other students. But I will say it will only matter is if they applied later, because most students that apply by a certain time or usually by December, usually get the decisions before. And I'm not sure about other schools, but with Morgan, once we reach a certain number, we do have deadlines, but it may affect, you getting the decision or you even deciding to come to that school if your decision comes after a certain date.
Joe, can I just say one more thing about dual enrollment? Because I think that's such an important topic. And James, hit the nail on the head with talking about the academic curriculum, and those grades will carry through your college career. But the other thing with dual enrollment is you almost have to have the end in mind of what your academic major is. Because when you're taking a lot of credits, because we see students coming in, with 30 credits, sometimes 60 credits, and they're going on the associate's degree path, but then those credits don't transfer into the major. And it's because they're not thinking about what their major is going to be with that bachelor's degree. They're just kind of thinking one class at a time, right? And that's really hard as a high school student to start taking dual enrollment sophomore, junior year, and thinking, okay, what do I want to be in 4 years, 5 years? But with dual enrollment, you really have to have that pathway and you have to have kind of that planning part. And so I would really encourage you to reach out to a few schools, colleges, universities that you might be on your list. Start with some of us in state, just so we can help you with that pre-advisement piece of what classes that might work for your major. Also, the state system, the University System of Maryland just rolled out a great tool called ArtSys. And this is, they have program guides on the platform. And so if you're interested in chemistry, you could pull up College Park or Towson University, and you can see the program guide of what classes will go into, or like what community college classes will go into chemistry. And so it's just some planning resource tools that transfer students are using, but obviously high school students can use that too on the dual enrollment lens.
Thank you. The next question I planned to ask was if you could share your current policies around test scores and admissions, but I think most of you have already touched on this. So I'll give it a minute in case anybody has anything to add about your testing policies for this year, but
I'll just share that we're test optional through 2027. And so that would hold weight for this year's class as well as our juniors coming right behind them.
So with Morgan, we are test optional, but when I am on the road, I do suggest that students still go ahead and take those tests. They can still submit those test scores if they want to. And at Morgan, we're looking for at least, for SAT, at least a 980 and a 17 on the ACT. So if students take those and they want to submit, they can, or if they take them and the tests are below, they want to submit it, they can also apply as test optional.
I'll just say at Towson, so we are test and optional, and we encourage students to submit the test because it will not hurt your application. So it only gives us more details to look at, and it'll never negatively impact a student.
Yep, and as I mentioned earlier, we're test required. We are indifferent between the two exams. You can self-report your score, so you'll just tell us what your score is on your application, the common application, and then if you are admitted and enroll, we will review, we will ask for the official scores, so that usually saves some students some money. Again, you don't have to send it directly from the test provider until you are admitted and choosing to enroll, but yes.
thank you. This next question was also very popular on the registration form. Can you share any tips for the personal statement or any essays that your school requires? So lots of students are interested in knowing about this.
Okay, happy to jump in. So we're talking about the essays. We have both an essay that students will choose to do as well as short answers. One of the tips I guess I would share is from the essay component. If an institution like a Maryland is not doing interviews, really take your time. Like pick the thing that makes sense for you to be able to explore, and more importantly than anything else, be able to share something additional about yourself, something that may distinguish you, from a large pool, something that might be really important to you. Not just about, a particular game that you played or something like that, unless there was something that was really meaningful that you wanted to convey. So use it as an opportunity to really share something additional voice, additional aspect or perspective that you would like to convey to the admissions team. I think that's really important. With our application, we also have short answers. Our short answers, I always tell students, take a look at that. Number and restriction is for characters and not words. So we're not asking for you to do 5 long essay questions, but rather the count is for characters. It really is just a thought. It may actually what you did last Tuesday. Tell us about it. It might have been something really fun or something that was important to you again. Where you want to travel or what you would like to study, those types of things. But again, try to make sure that it's authentic, make sure it's your voice, and that it's again sharing something in addition to what we already have in your other application materials.
So at Morgan, again, we're optional for essays. And in the past, we actually used to have prompts on the application to help students with the essays. But now that it is optional, I will just say for students to write in a way that showcase who you are as a person. Because usually when we look at the applications or the transcript, we're just seeing numbers. We don't know the actual individual behind the sheet of paper. And I'm even glad sometimes I get to actually interact with these students, actually get to know them, as an individual. But we don't get to speak to all thousands of students that apply to our school. So find a way or get assistance on a way to write an essay that showcases who you are, and I can actually tell it's an individual. We can tell when it's ChatGPT. Let me just say that. We can tell when it's ChatGPT or when, AI wrote it. So just be personable, be yourself, and show us how you grew, show us how you'll be able to, compete on campus within your major and things like that, or even write about your inspirations of like, what do you want to do with the degree after you obtain it from the university, things like that.
I just want to share a quick resource as you are thinking about essays to maybe serve as some inspiration or maybe calm some of the anxieties around it. We have a website called Essays That Worked. So if you just search Johns Hopkins Essays That Worked, it is a website that has essays that we update. We add new ones each year. They are real essays from students who are enrolling at Hopkins. And so you'll find that, you don't have to have cured cancer at 16 or 17 to get into college. There are essays about everyday experiences. But as my co-panelists have said, it's about what those essays tell us about you as an individual to help us understand what type of classmate, teammate, and roommate you'll be on our campus.
Yeah, my biggest story that I give students, especially, is if I had 300 essays of your senior class in front of me and I just picked one up and I didn't have any names associated to it, and I read it out loud, all of your classmates would be pointing at you and being like, "That's your essay, that's you," right? Because that's what we want to know. We want to know who you are, and we want a glimpse into your life. And so definitely just, be yourself, be authentic, be genuine, because we read thousands of applications and thousands of essays. And so we can definitely tell, we can definitely tell, and we would much rather just hear it from your voice and from you. So don't stress, like Calvin said, it should be fun.
All right. Thank you. And I'm going to pause for just a second to let Dr. Logan jump in for a minute. She just wanted to address a question.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are monitoring the Q&A, and we have had this question come up quite a bit. And so we wanted to just share with you the transcript notation that is going to be included on all transcripts. It's also on our school profiles. Just a note about this, the notations that are on transcripts, and there are many of them, they're really brief, but we thought what was most important to include, just to give those admissions uh, staff members information, was about that our course grades and how they're calculated has changed. So here's the notation. Beginning in the 25-26 school year, MCPS final course grades will be calculated using the average marking period percentages, which may affect GPAs. Grades on transcripts from 2025 to 2026 forward may not be directly comparable to those from prior years. So again, just indicating the shift and then directing them to the website for more information. This is going to be both on the transcript and on the school profiles.
Thank you so much, Dr. Logan, for answering that. And then I know that everyone at the panelists, you all touched on how you use those profiles and how you evaluate this transcript individually. So that's perfect. I hope that helps families have a complete understanding of that. So thank you. Okay, we will jump back into a different part of the application now. And are there any tips that you have for students? Again, some of you have touched on this a little bit before, but any tips on things that students can include in the activity section, or how maybe they should address any challenges that they faced during their high school careers? And maybe, Amy, we can start with you this time, if that's okay.
Of course. I'm going to actually take the second part of the question, which was how should students address any challenges? So if you use the Common Application, there are 2 questions on there, and it's called a community disruption question. And so basically it allows the students an opportunity to talk about kind of the broader range of impacts. And then, well, I guess, sorry, it's now called challenges and circumstances. That was updated this year. And then there's an additional information section as well. So those 2 spots on the Common App are really great because that's part of the Common App application at large. So it doesn't matter about our individual questions that we're asking you, we will get all of that information. So those are 2 good ways for students to talk about any circumstances that they want to disclose that may explain maybe some grades on a transcript, or if you experienced any type of hardship or extenuating circumstances that you don't want to write about in your college essay, you can, share that information there. And for those that are on the Common Application, we will get that information. For those that aren't, I'm not sure if they have a different way of getting that, but I just wanted to share that because sometimes students don't know until they're in the application and then they see those 2 questions pop up.
I'm going to take it that Amy's done. So I guess, that was a really good point that students typically don't want to share other things. And I think it's important for them to hear it from us that you should share. If there is something that did occur that's contextual, that affected what's on the transcript, or maybe just affected your years in high school, and you're on the line, should I share it? Should I not share it? More information is more information. And when we're going through and reviewing the application, the more context we have, the better. Like usually with my team, when we're looking at applications, I tell them you're kind of detective. Like you can look at a transcript and say something happened in sophomore year. Like what happened? And typically we'll look to see what did the counselor say, or what's in the essay, or did someone else mention it? And if there's nothing there, we have nothing to go by. And so really taking advantage of those types of opportunities are great. I did mention earlier about activities, don't really shy away I usually share with students from things that are important to you. Like you might say, I do this, awesome thing in my community every year. We do this thing where we raise money for whatever, but they don't want to hear about that. Yes, we do. If it's important to you, it's important to us. That should be the rule of thumb. And just go into detail. Tell us about it, because that might be that thing that distinguishes you from, again, other applicants. It might be something that puts you in line, who knows, for a scholarship opportunity, because you're doing this thing that's really important to you and it shines through.
We definitely say if you are writing an essay, let us know. So I agree with James. Just let us know what's going on, write about it. Definitely in a creative manner that will aid as well, so we can see um, how you write and things like that. But it'll definitely help to see the whole individual.
Okay.
I think
Go ahead, Amy.
I thought Calvin froze, but he did not. I saw him blink, so I didn't know if he wanted to say anything. I just want to reiterate, your application, you have to brag about yourself. You need to disclose everything. Don't be shy, because like James said, this is our only way of knowing about you. And when you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 applications that you're reading, don't think something is a small involvement and you're like, oh no, I just won't put that. No, put that. But definitely I would say a couple like just housekeeping things. Make sure that you're using capitalization and kind of looking at attention to detail. I know some of you might be filling it out on the phone. So just take your time because we can tell when it's rushed. And again, when this is like our only platform to know more about you, we really want to know those details. That's why we give you time to do this. So definitely take your time, try to list what's most important to you first, because that's what we're going to read first. And on the common application and specific, there is a section that asks you how many hours per week and how many weeks per year you're doing a certain activity. That's also important not to skip over because that gives us a glimpse of what you're doing in a week's time and what activities are more robust or more have more hours to them. And so that's something to make sure that you don't skip over because it's kind of it's a lot to fill out and we look at that though. So just make sure that you're looking at all the details and giving that information to us.
I'm going to ask one more question from this sheet, and then there's some questions from the chat. So if you have something in the chat that hasn't been answered yet, we're going to try to get those. But I wanted to ask, how can students and families learn about financial aid programs at your school? That was also a topic of interest when I read the registrations. Students very curious to learn about financial aid.
I can kick us off. A couple of quick things. First, do your research. Parallel to the application process for admission, there's an application process for financial aid and scholarships. And each college goes about making their institution affordable slightly differently. I would say you can be cognizant of the sticker price. That's what we call the price when you Google how much a college costs. But don't let that be a deterrent. Most students do not pay the cost that you see when you Google. There are other tools you can use to get a sense of your financial aid, need-based financial aid, like the net price calculator. All colleges are federally mandated to have a net price calculator on their website. Your family could put some financial information in, and it will give you a sense of how much need-based financial aid you can be eligible for. Some schools also have what's called the My Intuition calculator. Hopkins, we do. It's a lot shorter. It's about 6 or 7 questions. That again is a cost aid estimator. We have financial aid offices. So if you have questions, you can reach out to us about that. Some of us, I know at Hopkins, we have a virtual financial aid session where we'll walk through the process for applying to financial aid, how we make Hopkins affordable for families, and things like that. So make sure you're looking into that. And then merit scholarships. Schools have their own merit scholarships. You can find that information out on their website or asking their admissions officer about those scholarships that come from the institution. There are also merit scholarships that come from outside organizations. So you should take a look at Montgomery County. I'm sure there are some scholarship programs that are offered to students within the district that are local scholarships. There are national scholarships like the Gates and Coca-Cola and Dell. Questbridge is a scholarship program that you can investigate. I know College Board has their Big Future tool can help direct you to some outside scholarships. FastWeb is another one that can direct you to some outside scholarships. So do your research. It is a process. Stay organized. Um, Save those essays. You can oftentimes use those same essays for admission. For scholarships, you should adjust them, not just copy and paste. But some of those outside scholarships or separate scholarships from an institution, those merit-based scholarships, require essays as well. So just be prepared that it's going to be a process alongside the admissions process.
Calvin hit everything except for one that was on my list, which was the MHEC grants and scholarships. So Maryland residents can apply for the Maryland Higher Education Commission grants and scholarships. That is a separate application. So make sure, again, you do your research and you are applying for those as well. But Calvin hit everything else.
And just one thing I would add is just staying organized. I thought that was a really important point. Really paying close attention to the deadlines as you're applying to schools, especially as students are applying to more and more schools. Pay close attention to, is there a deadline that you have to meet in terms of applying in order to qualify for merit scholarships? Like for Maryland, for example, you have to do by November 1 and you'll qualify. Or is there a separate application to do for scholarships? Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, but you don't want to miss any opportunity where money's left on the table that you can pursue.
I feel like everyone covered the financial aid portion. I did send our personal financial webpage to the host and panelists so if they can share that out with everyone. So you guys, on our website, we do have information for applying for FAFSA. And if you do need assistance filling out the form, our financial office will help you fill that out. You just reach out. We do also have information for applying for other types of aid. We have scholarships, grants, and again, other types of aid on our website, so you can actually navigate through there. But as the other panelists said, do your own research. I currently have a cousin that's currently attending college right now. And for us, what we did, students are on social media all the time, and they only take a second to search up some scholarship options. Even Instagram, they have pages dedicated to scholarships and grant opportunities. TikTok, there's options there. So I always send the students to what they already use. Go to the platforms that you're already on, research some scholarships. There are even scholarships that don't even require essays nowadays. So all they have to do is actually fill out a form and submit those applications. And at Morgan, we do accept outside scholarships, so students can stack those scholarships up. So I tell them just apply to any and everything.
Okay, thank you. We had one more question, I think also related to the grade change about this statement, and I don't know if we want to share the statement again that was on the transcript. But the question asked to panelists, if you saw a statement, or if you saw the statement that MCPS will put on the transcript, and this will be on the school profile, both of which I know are very important in the review process at your school. If you saw this, but then you also saw like a downward trend, for example, in a student, in a student's junior year, would this provide context? Would this help not to, diminish the view of the student's transcript? And if I'm not asking that, if Dr. Logan, like if you need to clarify the question at all, but I think, families are just concerned about, will this be helpful? Will colleges, look at this and will it help you understand the transcript?
I'm happy to share that, from our vantage point, we always rely so closely on the partnerships that we have with our school counselors, our colleagues, with our schools, with our central offices. And, you can really rely on the fact that, as was mentioned earlier by other colleagues, that conversation is ongoing. It's ongoing throughout the school year. It's ongoing if something's coming up a year down the line, if it's advice on how would this be received or how would this affect the admissions process. So those conversations are ever going. But what's important to us is that, statements like this are included. So the fact that this is included on the transcript helps every institution, not just the four that are represented here, but if there's an institution in the Midwest or on the West Coast, shall remain nameless, some of them. But if you choose to apply to them, they're going to see that that's going to be helpful for them. They may not be as familiar. There was a change that happened in this particular school district, but they're going to pay close attention that that was included on the transcript and train their reviewers to do the same thing when they're reviewing schools that are coming from, let's say for this example, Montgomery County in Maryland. So I think it's really, really helpful. It does take like a year or so to kind of, figure that piece out. Will it negatively affect students? No, because we have the context ahead of time and it's applicable to all the students that are a part of that school district. So we would just see that change and note that is a change for this year going forward for Montgomery.
And I'll just add, I know this feels like a big change for y'all, but this happens all the time across the whole United States. I mean, we read thousands of high school transcripts and profiles, and we see this type of changes all the time. And so please, it feels like it's only you that this is happening to, but we see this all the time with high schools and districts across the United States. So just keep that in mind. You're not alone.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining. If there's anything else, any kind of closing thoughts that any schools would like to share, I'll give you one more chance if there's a question I didn't ask or something else you'd like to share with students and families who are joining us tonight.
I'll start. My piece of advice, or just words of wisdom, I guess, is just try to enjoy this process. I know it can be overwhelming and so stressful because you have to stay organized, you have to know different deadlines, you have to know different requirements. But for most of you, you probably will only go or go through this one time, at least, as a high school student going into or applying to college as a senior, and enjoy it. Celebrate the small wins and the accomplishments that come your way, and put aside any we like to call them side steps, or like oh, someone told me a really good word, and it's 7:45, so my brain is fried. But anyways, just try to get over the any negative decisions that you might get and look at that as an opportunity to um celebrate the good. So anyways, just try to celebrate the small wins and look forward to the process, because you all are amazing individuals and you will find your fit, and it's going to be a great journey ahead.
I'm going to hop in
My
as the
advice-
rest of you think. Sorry. There have been a couple of questions too as you're closing out. If anybody wants to have any comments about AI too. Sorry.
Okay, yes, I was just gonna touch on that. I just opened the Q&A and I just saw that someone is asking, do we use AI to evaluate 1,000 applications that we do get? Um, we're currently not using AI. I'm not sure if any other school is, but our application portal, and we also have a separate team that evaluates applications, and we give out the decisions that way. And I saw another question about, I'm gonna just touch on this about social media, looking into student social media through the application process. That's been a new thing that I've been seeing lately. I'm not sure if schools are doing this, however, Morgan is not. We do not take the time out to look up every student that applies, social media in correlation to the university. But Morgan do not do that. And like Amy said, enjoy the process. This is your time to explore different campuses, tour the school. And if you do feel uneasy or not sure if this new change in Monroe County is going to affect your applications to other schools, again, this is just 4 schools in Maryland speaking. You should reach out to the admissions office and see and inquire about these changes and how it will affect your application to the university.
I'll share that we're not doing using social media in our review process, and AI is not something that's hit us yet in terms of our admissions review process. So we're still reviewing each and every one of those applications in the same way we always have. But in terms of words of advice, yeah, I agree with the colleagues. You know, this is your senior year. This is a great time to be able to enjoy. The process is the process in terms of getting your applications in, but once you do get them in, you know, sit back for a moment and enjoy. Just enjoy the fact that you've done what you needed to do, you've taken your time, you've put your best foot forward and all those great things, and really enjoy this time. You know, this is a great time. Next year's going to be a great time too in your first year in college, but really enjoy your senior year. Try not to rush through it.
And I'll add a quick piece of advice. These are probably 4 colleges that you're aware of. There are lots of great institutions that are probably unfamiliar names to you. And so I always encourage students to broaden their horizons. And you might come across a college that's a great fit for you that you never wasn't on your radar. So make sure that you are, thinking about that, applying broadly. Across levels of selectivity. In all the schools that you apply to, there's been a benefit. It is a lot easier to apply to schools than probably back when some of us went to college, I should say. But that doesn't mean that you apply to 20, 25, 30 schools. You can only go to one. And there's lots of processes with these institutions. And, there's the academic, social, and financial fit that you are trying to figure out. So make sure all the schools that you apply to are places that you would be really thrilled to attend.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your time and your expertise with us this evening. It was very informative. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Cruz if she would like to say any closing remarks. But otherwise, thank you all so much for joining.
Yes, thank you, Jill. And thank you to all of our panelists for coming out tonight. Thank you for everyone who joined us this evening. We hope that this information was helpful and that it gave you all of the answers that you needed around our MCPS grading and reporting regulation and the college admissions process. Thank you again for coming and enjoy your night.